Hello, everyone. In yet another episode of Talking TB, today we'll be discussing about navigating the treatment pathway as a TB affected individual. And to share the survivor perspective, today we have with us Ashna Ashish. Ashna is a lawyer, public health professional, and an MDR TB survivor. She's associated with Survivors Against Tuberculosis, a survivor led collective that works with TB survivors and experts to advocate for person centric TB care in India. Ashna, hello, welcome. So let's dive straight into your journey. I'm sure the moment you're being diagnosed with MDR tuberculosis, especially, it's a life altering moment. Everything feels as if it's a precipice of a change. So let me ask you, what were your first steps that you took after being diagnosed with TB, and how did you particularly feel about the steps that you took?
So my journey is actually broken into two parts because initially I was treated for drug susceptible TB.
Oh, okay.
So what happened was I found a swollen lymph node above my collarbone, and because I'm somebody who worked in public health law and policy even before this, I kind of knew that that's something I should go get checked out. Interestingly, I did not have any of the usual symptoms. But I did have excessive weight loss, which is not something I factored in because I'm not somebody who's generally been more than a certain weight. So I did go in to get a FNAC, which is a fine needle aspiration cytology. What they do basically is they take a needle and they draw fluid from that lymph node. So they found the presence of the TB bacteria, and it was not a DST test. So it was only an FNAC, and they started me on drug susceptible treatment, which is basically the first line of drugs. There are four medicines that they start you on. And after this, what happened for a couple of months, I was on this medication, and there are side effects. And so, because I wasn't responding to treatment a certain way, and I was also starting to feel in about a month of this treatment worse, actually. I went to my doctor, and the lymph node had increased in size, and insisted that I would like another referral and that I think this may have advanced. And he said, we can wait a few more months, but I was quite insistent. So that's when I finally went to a different hospital in a different city, and they did a surgical biopsy, and then they found out that actually it was resistant TB, and we shouldn't have. It's a good thing we didn't wait. And so, in both cases, when I was being treated initially for susceptible TB and then resistant TB, my first step was to find out what tests I need to get done, and then ensure that I can get on the treatment that is commensurate to that test.
Thank you for sharing that. And straight away, again, diving to the second question, because you've been so articulate. Let me ask you, how did you choose and were you guided to select your regimen particularly?
Right. So I want to draw a contrast here between the period where I was treated for susceptible TB
Right.
and resistant TB. Susceptible TB, initially I was given AKT, which is the four medicines, which was fine because if you think someone has susceptible TB and you're giving that to them, that's okay. Without a DST, though, that was curious to me because a universal DST is something that's been prescribed in the guidelines. What happened from then on, my liver enzymes were slightly off the charts, and this is understandable on TB medication. My doctor jumped the gun and introduced second line medication without a resistant test. So I was given injectables for a bit. And this mirrored the time that I was getting worse. So I put my foot down and I insisted that I want to get a referral elsewhere. I went elsewhere. And because I had to go back to my hometown, she also found out who the best doctor was to get in touch there. And that's how I met my treating doctor for the resistant TB period, and who actually very much treated me like a care partner. So initially, I'd asked him the Bangladesh regimen, which was the 9-month regimen at the time, had just come around, and I asked him why the 2-year regimen, why can't I do the 9-year regimen, 9-month regimen, sorry, and he clarified that because of my initial treatment, where they introduced second line without testing, that might not be a safe option anymore. So we actually co-created the care regimen of those 2 years. Even when there were side effects, he stepped in and gave me other options. He's like, would you like to consider these alternatives? So that experience was very, very different from the initial experience.
Now that you've briefly spoken about the part before starting your treatment, let's go more micro into it. I'm sure even after you start your treatment, there are many barriers, many challenges. So, what were the challenges that you encountered? And we would definitely like to know how you overcame them because I'm sure you did.
So, in the susceptible part, and this is something that I'm saying only from an individual perspective,
course.
because given the privilege I had and the awareness I had, I should have advocated sooner for a change. I was not feeling well for a long time, and even on the TB medication for susceptible TB, while it has side effects, I'm somebody who could function. I'm also a caregiver, so I was taking care of my mom at the time when she was also sick parallelly. And when I started feeling like something is off, I waited a little bit because I said, the doctor knows I'm going for my follow ups. It's only when it got to a point where I couldn't take it anymore that I insisted I will now get a referral. So, advocating for myself better, even with the level of awareness I had, there was that difference that came in, which goes to show that one of the barriers that persons affected by TB face is not just the lack of information, but the asymmetry that exists in that relationship, right? When I started treatment for resistant TB, my challenges were different. I had incredible doctors there, so nothing there. But these were individual doctors. Systemically, there was nothing in place. I literally followed my doctor around. When he was in the private sector, I was taking care in the private sector. When he went to a government hospital, I went there to take care from him. My challenges there were on a physical and mental level. Physically, as part of the 2-year treatment regimen, I also had injectables for 6 months. So what happens with amikacin, which is what I was on, it's an intramuscular injection. And even after you rotate sites, which I was doing, there are only so many places that you can take the injection.
6 months.
So we tried wherever there's intramuscular advice, then we tried a portable IV and all of that. And by the end of it, I was actually considering putting it in my femoral vein, which is in my thigh, because we'd run out of places mostly, but we managed somehow. Amikacin also comes with a host of other side effects. So there was a lot of vertigo and ringing in the ears. I had joint issues because of PZID, which I still have residual. So there was a lot of pain and fatigue. Mentally, what happened is that I was on cycloserine, which actually made it very, very difficult to sort of keep an even keel. I went through a very extended period of depression, and I did also have a breakdown. So these were the challenges for me personally.
But then now that you've touched upon the side effects, would you like to elaborate more on how did you sort of try and manage those side effects?
So with my resistant TB treatment, I got very lucky because my doctor worked with me like I was a care partner. And in our follow-ups, I would bring up these side effects to him. And what we do is we'd either get, like for the vertigo, we got something to help me. For the uric acid buildup, we got something to help me with that. So the medication continued. What happened, interestingly, at one point was when I had a mental health breakdown and I called him. And I wasn't very coherent at the point. And I remember him saying, let's stop treatment for a few days. And I kind of flipped and I'm like, you can't stop TB treatment. And he's like, the point of this is to make you happy. You are not happy. And that was very strange to me because I'm like, we look at clinical parameters, we look at, the bacterial load. Nobody has ever, including myself, I have never thought about my happiness being a metric to my overall well-being. And he actually stopped the medication under supervision. Please do not stop your medication unless a doctor advises. We stopped it under supervision for just a few days, like 3-4 days. And that gave me the breathing room. And this was towards the end of my treatment when I had about 4 or 5 months left. So that gave me the breathing room to come back and then finish those 5 months. I won't say easily, but definitely better than before. My quality of life was better. I was feeling more like myself again. And all because I had somebody who actually factored in my happiness into, my treatment and my treatment journey.
So now that we're talking about this, I'm sure that everybody by now must have known that this journey is extremely challenging. It's not a cakewalk. And I'm sure everybody faces some kind of barriers while going through this tediously long journey. I'm sure you must have had your fair share of, not fair, but some unfair share of barriers that you must have faced. So, would you like to touch upon some of those as well?
Sure. My barriers primarily were in terms of initially getting the right
Kind of
diagnosis,
diagnosis,
which could have saved me a lot of time. And then also having to take the longer regimen because medications were introduced without testing. So, also incorrect treatment initially for the susceptible part. When we come to the resistant part, my barriers primarily, thankfully, weren't systemic, but only because I come from privilege and means and awareness. The government hospital that I used to go to, I could walk into my doctor's office because I knew him, but there were lots of people waiting in line. And he treated everyone equally. But I'm saying generally, it's systemically to have to go to a government hospital and access care, while the quality of care is excellent. We know that the burden is so high that wait times are understandably long from a systems perspective, but that affects the patient's quality of care as well, especially when you're in a condition where you're already struggling with an illness and with the side effects of that illness. So for me, the barriers were more personal. One other barrier that I faced was self stigma. And there was also social stigma, but again, that didn't bother me much because I could afford to not be bothered by it. The self stigma was interesting because I asked my doctor straight up that, can I pass this on to someone? Should I be taking infection control measures? And I thought I'm talking about infection control, but even somebody with the awareness I had, I remember not hugging my dad for a while because even after I was told by my doctor, you do not have an infectious form of TB. And even when TB is contagious, after the first few weeks on treatment, the person is no longer contagious unless the disease progresses for some reason. So self stigma was also a barrier to just not accessing care per se, but definitely to being able to have a certain quality of life. And the social stigma did not bother me, but it is a huge issue because it becomes a barrier for people to say that, I'm somebody with TB. They need to, not anybody's fault. It can happen to anybody. It's an
Anyone.
illness. And it's like, COVID. So, yeah.
Oh my God. When we talk about our journeys, when we talk about the days, sometimes it's not even one day at a time, it goes down to 1 minute at a time thing wherein you just have to just gather yourself and just keep going uh, because you don't know how, when, and how it's going to end. So, in that, what you need is some motivation, some support. So, tell us about something. Who were your biggest strengths, and I'm sure they must have helped you a lot in making sure that your treatment is successfully completed. So, just talk to us about it a little bit.
So I was very, very fortunate that other than a few people who were stigmatizing, I mostly had very, very supportive people in my tribe. My dad was a constant source of support. My doctors, the one who diagnosed my resistant TB and the one who treated it, fabulous. I could not have done this without them. And my friends and colleagues were very understanding and very supportive. I also had the means and the awareness to be able to access mental health counseling support. So my therapist was very, very understanding throughout the process. So I had a solid support system. And even then, I can tell you that the isolation was so consuming that I do not, I can't fathom for people who are more vulnerable, whether it's persons from certain socioeconomic strata or LGBTQIA plus persons who don't have family support. I don't know how you do it without that, because even with it, that sense of isolation was overwhelming. But support, connection, community, all of this really, really helped. And it's what we need more of in TB care.
Yeah, because it's not an individual journey. A person might be affected, but it's the entire family that sort of fights with it. And yeah, now that you've fully recovered and looking back in the hindsight and retrospection, what do you think? Are there any things that you feel would have been different or some improvements that might have changed your experience? Something, yeah?
Looking back, I would have advocated for myself sooner and better.
Yeah.
And that's very ironic because I now advocate for person-centered TB care.
But that's great, isn't it?
I would have advocated much
For myself
sooner,
first.
and I would have taken less of the. Also, the second time, I mean, I took a while before I went to my doctor who was treating me for resistant TB as well to say that, listen, I can't take it anymore. It took a breakdown for me to be like, I can't take it anymore. And it shouldn't be like that. It's not supposed to make your life more difficult. Yes, there are side effects, but you're being treated to get better, not feel worse.
Exactly.
So when I look back, I think with the awareness you have, definitely, I mean, do not let the fact that you're not a clinical expert get in the way of you voicing your experience. Because while healthcare providers and health systems are experts on the illness, the lived experience of that illness and what it's doing to you and that impact, you are the best person to be able to communicate that, and then together you can come up with a solution, which happened for me, thankfully. But it could have happened sooner rather than later had I done a better job of advocating for myself at a personal level. Systemically, when I look back, my journey could have been very different if I did not have the privilege I had, if I did not have the awareness I had, if I did not have the two doctors I had towards the second half in the resistant part. So what I've learned is that the individual good things that I found, whether it is holistic care, factoring in my physical and emotional, mental well-being, whether it's the support system of people generally being supportive and not discriminating, all of that needs to be systemic. Because I got lucky, and
Not
I say this
everybody
very
is.
often, that sure, willpower and all of that factor into struggling with an illness, but it comes down to luck and privilege, who survives and who doesn't. And while I got lucky, we lose a lot of lives to a disease that is preventable and curable, that can be avoided if we bring forth these systemic changes that focus on person-centered care and centering the needs and the values or sort of support mechanisms for persons affected by TB.
Ashna, it was really, really wonderful talking to you. And really, really thanks for shedding light on the journey that you've had. I'm sure it was tough, but it's even tougher to talk about it. And it takes courage, and you have that, and we all appreciate it. So thank you so much for being a part of this conversation, because it's really, really needed. And somebody needs to step up and keep making sure that these conversations are being brought to the table every single day. Thank you so much once again, Ashna, for being a part of this conversation. Lived experience inputs of TB survivors are critical in ensuring that TB care is truly person centric. So, let's make sure that when survivors talk, we listen. Thank you so much.